What does it mean when they say start with the end in mind? Like, how do you know what the end is if you're just at the start? So we're going to be talking today to one of our authors in our recent book, The Book I Read, Latara Dragoo. We're going to be coming up in just a second and talking about the end in mind, how you can set that end in mind and what it is that you're doing in your business. So stay tuned because you're going to want to hear this. Hey all, I'm so excited to introduce you to one of our authors, Latara Dragoo, in this book, The Book I Read, Volume 2. These are stories of transformation, the transformation that the authors received from reading a book that they read. I want you to think, is there ever a book that I read that transformed my life? Then this would definitely be a book that you want to tune into. So Latara, I'm excited to interview you today because we're going to be talking about a topic that is I'm very passionate about this topic, and which is kind of weird because why is this such a passionate topic for me? Talking about the end in mind. How do we get clear on what end result we want to get from things? And I'll just share briefly before Latara shares is that the reason this is very important for me is I spent decades in my life just kind of walking around life, not even knowing what I was doing, kind of like living like a zombie, not really knowing what I was doing, where I was going. I didn't have a desire. I didn't have a vision. So once I learned that I could actually set an end in mind and go towards that, my life totally started to transform. So let's welcome Latara Dragoo. I'm excited to have you today to talk about the end in mind. So Latara, why don't you just take a little bit of time to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and then let's dive right into what is your end in mind?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. As usual, I am super, super stoked to be a part of any project that you head. So it was just a no-brainer for me to jump into the book I read, Volume 2. And let's see. Where do I begin? I suppose having an end in mind also means you have a beginning in mind, right?
Right. Good point. Good point.
All right. So what's the question again? So I am a digital marketing strategist and IT consultant. I've been also behind the scenes working with Linda in some of her projects and promotions. And I just would love to help people bridge the gap between their business and their clients ultimately.
Well, how did you get into that line of work? Because I know your story, but somebody listening might not know it. So how did you get into that line of work? I always find this to be fascinating because I was talking to someone earlier who, she was a scientist and did sciencey type of work. She literally is a rocket scientist. And then now she does life coaching. And so it's like, okay, how'd you go from rocket scientist to life coach? Like just knowing that journey, because I love the stories. So I'm always fascinated by the stories. So yeah, why don't you tell a little bit about how you got started in this line of work and what moved you into it?
Okay. So I worked for Dream Homes magazine for 18 years. And if you don't know it, it's a luxury real estate magazine. And I learned a lot about branding, about marketing, about graphic design, about strategy, all of these things, publishing even. And once so during the COVID shutdown, I was laid off. And at that moment, I was proactive. And I thought to myself, well, this is the perfect opportunity for me to start my own business. And I didn't know how long the COVID shutdown was going to be or what the consequences would be. So I was like, well, I'm just going to do this until I can go out and find a job. But I never ended up going and getting a job. I'm still my own boss. So
fantastic.
And I jumped into digital marketing specifically because I realized that traditional marketing techniques and strategies are being phased out, and we all need to be on the digital landscape if we want our business to survive.
That's for sure. I mean, with what's like, I think I heard the other day, 8.6 billion people on the planet. I mean, I don't know if that's the true number or not, but I heard that the other day and I was just like blown away.
Wow.
And then what they said was that like there's 8.6 billion people on the planet. And of that, 2 million, 2 billion are on social media,
Mm.
but there's
Oh.
over 5 billion who are on the internet. So 5 billion people are seeing digital images.
Yep.
And they're bombarded with them. So Latara, with the type of work that you do, doing the graphic design and doing marketing and helping people to get their message out there, what do you recommend for somebody who's just getting started? Like maybe they just started their business just a little while ago, and they're not really sure, how to get their message out there amongst all the noise that's out there. Like, how do we stand out? Because it's through our marketing that helps us to stand out. But how do we stand out?
Well, first of all, this is the perfect time to give a shameless plug to you, because becoming a best-selling author is one of those ways that you can just rise above the competition and stand out. So you're providing such a tremendous service for a lot of these people.
Great answer. And by the way, I did not set her up for that. So that's perfect. Well, let's talk about that, because in the book publishing world, books are there. They serve so many different purposes. We're not going to talk about books right now, but one is like we get to share our story. We get to share our message. Maybe you have techniques that people can use. Like if you think of like all those dummy books are how-to books. They're how to this, how to that, for dummies, right? And so if you have something that you teach people of how to do something, writing a book. But here's the thing, because we're talking about the end in mind right now. So once the book is done, your work is just starting. Really,
Yep.
Your work is just starting, because once you write the book, it's done. It has a finite point, and that's published. But after that comes the marketing. So let's talk about that marketing and how do we figure out what that end in mind is with our marketing? And I'll stress that your marketing never ends, because when you stop marketing it, your sales end. So let's talk about it, Latara. How do I decide as a person? Let's say I'm in a collaboration book, because we publish a lot of collaboration books. We also publish solo books, but let's focus right now on the collaboration books and the chapters, because each person writes one chapter. So let's talk to that person right now who has written a chapter in a collaboration book, either ours or somebody else's collaboration book. How do they set that end in mind to use that chapter as a marketing tool that can help them with their business?
Wonderful question. So you can become a bestseller, and if you don't leverage that, it's practically worthless. It really is all about how you apply that to your business. Are you posting on social media that you're a best-selling author? Are you using your book as a lead magnet? Are you using it to get speaking engagements? All of these things are amplified because you're the best-selling author, but if you're not utilizing it as a tool, then that's a missed opportunity. So that's first and foremost. Try to do something with this instead of just saying, oh, well, that was fun, and I'm just going to put my book on the shelf and it's going to collect dust and we'll never hear of it again.
Well, one good point on that, because if you do it like what Latara just said, you write your story, the book launches, you become a best-selling author, and then you put it on the shelf, you never do anything with it. Oftentimes what comes along with that is like, well, the book didn't do me any good, and that mentality behind that, I totally get it. But the book is not the book is a conduit. The book is a piece of marketing that is your job then to utilize it. So okay, keep on going. I just had to put that little tip in there.
Well, I loved how you said the word conduit. That is such a great word. It really is your conduit to opportunities. There's so many times I've heard examples of people that are trying to break into the speaking world, trying to get gigs on podcasts and whatnot, and they'll reach out to these podcast hosts and these other event hosts, and they're going, "Well, who are you? You know, what is your expertise? I don't know you from Adam." But all you have to do is say, "Hey, I'm a best-selling author," and you show them your book, and all of a sudden they're going to like, "Oh my gosh, you're the expert. Okay, we have to have you on our stage." So that's one of the ways you actually utilize it. So there's so many different ways, though. You can, like I said, you can use it as your lead magnet, because one of the things that I think a lot of authors have this mistaken impression of is, you know, they're just going to go live off the royalties from the book sales. And first of all, that right, just getting enough sales to come through is such a challenge anyways. But to think that that is your end goal is sorely mistaken, because you can get clients from the book that are, you know, high ticket sales, right? So that's one $1,000 client is going to be equal to, you know, hundreds of sales of the book. So why not leverage it that way? Why not help your readers go through the customer journey with you through your chapter or your book, however you however you get to bestseller status, and make sure that you have that end goal of utilizing it to bring in clients.
Yeah, it really is an important piece of that puzzle, because you can utilize a book in so many different ways to market. Now, you're the, you know, marketing expert here. I'm not. I do marketing, but I'm not like
you
a
are
marketing.
too, but
I have my forte, you know, I have my things. I just, you know, honestly, I just do what I love. I don't even, I have no strategy. You have strategy. I do not. My strategy is do what I love. Like that's my sole strategy. Like if I love it, I'm going to do it. Yeah,
really
that's it.
good. I love that.
Because I love social media so much. I just did a post where I said it's something about being addicted to it. You know? So yes, I am addicted to it, and that's okay, because I love it and I'm going to keep doing it. But, you know, getting those messages out there, this is a really important piece. So what can you share with us that creates a win-win situation for me as the author, as well as for my potential client? Now, something you just mentioned, which I love to talk about all the time, is, you know, I'm not J.K. Rowling, okay? I'm not Stephen King. I'm not selling millions of copies of my book when it launches.
Right.
So how am I going to take advantage of the book as a marketing tool in order to get that $1,000, $5,000, if you have a $10,000 program and you can get one client out of the book, as opposed to selling, let me see, you'd have to sell, you'd have to sell a lot of books. You'd have to sell about 2,000 to 2,500 books in order to make that same amount of money. Now they say, now, Latara, I would love for you to either agree with or dispel this myth, because what I've heard is that it's just as easy to get a $10,000 client as it is to sell one book. Like, it's just as easy. So agree, or is it a myth?
Well, I've never gotten a $10,000 client, so I don't know, but
okay, let's say $1,000.
I have heard that as well. And maybe it's not quite the same with the book and a $10,000 program, but maybe if you were selling $1,000 program versus a $5,000 program, it's kind of an equal sell. And so I guess that the main thing is you want to think about how, the volume, the sheer volume of the $2,500 or I'm sorry, 2,500 book sales. How many people do you have to reach out to get that many sales? And now think of, if you have a $1,000 or a $5,000 program, how many sales do you have to make? And it just feels a lot easier to make, you know, a handful of $5,000 sales as opposed to just being on this unending quest to sell as many books as possible.
Yeah, because if you look at like the actual money that you make from sales of books, let's use solo authors as an example. You're going to make anywhere from $4. You might make $12 per copy. It all depends. There are a lot of factors that lie into that. And so let's say you're going to make $12 per copy. If you have a $1,200 program, you have to sell 100 copies of a book in order to make that $1,200. If you have a $1,200 program, you sell one program. And so you use the book as a marketing tool to upsell people to that program so that because they know that you're the person to work with once they read your chapter in a book or they read your book. And they're like, okay, this is somebody I mean, I've hired people based on reading their books. I've hired people based on reading their chapters. It all depends on what I'm looking for and what I need right now in this moment in my own business. And so really like thinking of it from that perspective. Yeah. So how do I decide what my end in mind is? That's what we're talking what we're actually talking about today is
the end in mind. And first of all, when you set out on your journey as an author, I would highly advise that you take a look at where you want, what is your end goal in mind? Is it a high ticket sale? Is it a coaching client? Is it getting people to buy into an online course? So what you want to do is you want to make sure you have a call to action in the book or in your chapter, just so that if somebody reads your book and that chapter really resonates with them and they think to themselves, wow, you're the expert. I really want to get in touch with you. You know, I resonate with your story. I can totally relate. And you're already developing that rapport with your audience even before they meet you, which is remarkable in and of itself. That's why, you know, your book is such a remarkable marketing tool. But what do you want them to what's the customer journey you want them to go through? Do you want to, you know, lead it to a one-to-one call with you, or, you know, just to get on their email list and then, or get on your email list and then do a drip campaign with them? So that's why it's good to have that understanding, because it's one thing to share your story if you just have an amazing story and you want to get it out to as many people as possible, and that's awesome. Some of your authors, I'm sure, are in it to make an impact in the world. And if that's the goal, then that is their goal, is that impact that they're making. So how are they utilizing that to spread awareness on certain topics, or you know, try to get funding for a nonprofit or something like that? So it just really depends on where your intentions are. But I think it's that you have an intention going into it, and you're not just kind of going, oh, you know, kind of going with the flow, which is even I was doing that a lot up until the part where I was a business owner, because then you have to be very intentional with your time.
Yeah. And they say time is money. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know that it really is, but it's money in a sense, I guess, in the way we kind of think of it. And it's so true. So setting that intention, you know, that intention, this is, you know, one thing I have, you know, started doing this last several years is making sure that I have an intention everywhere I go, no matter where it is. And sometimes that intention is just to meet an incredible person that day. It's not my intentions. My intentions actually are never like, I'm going to go in here to make money. Like that's not who I am. I'm just not about that. And so I love this, you know, setting that end in mind. And this, if I understand correctly, that is actually one of the habits in the book that you wrote about,
Yes.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that's in the book I read. Let me just get all this stuff up here so you guys know what we're talking about today. So how the book I read works is these are stories of transformation. We asked people, we said, what is a book that you read that has transformed your life? We don't want you to tell a book report or a book review. We want you to share the transformation that you received from that book. And so, first of all, you can get your copy of the book at actiontakerspublishing.com/TBIR, which stands for The Book I Read. That's actiontakerspublishing.com/TBIR. And Latara, your chapter is titled 7 Habits for Living Your Best You. And so go ahead and get that book and get your copy of, you know, read Latara's chapter as well as the other chapters in the book. But let's talk just a little bit about the habit, because you did tell me that, you know, I haven't read the book yet, the Stephen Covey book. So it's time for me to read that. But
Oh
the end
my
in
goodness,
mind,
yes. You
yeah,
already exhibit a lot of the habits in there that
oh,
I've
cool.
recognized. So I think you're
Maybe
probably
I only
ahead of
need
the
to
game
learn.
there. But
I only need to learn one or two of them or something. I don't.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely
Awesome.
confirmation that you're on the right track too, I think.
Yeah, yes, interesting. Thank you for that. I appreciate. I've done a lot of work this last, 10 years, working on myself and doing a lot of, business development and stuff like that. So it's been awesome, getting to where I am today, and I can't wait to see, where I am in 10 years from now. It's going to be super exciting. But let's talk about that end in mind. How important is it for us to have the end in mind when going into a project? So let's not talk about the books anymore. Let's just talk about any, like, let's say somebody's listening and they are not an author and they have no intention of ever becoming an author, but they do have a business and they've noticed that, like, so you have a business, right? And you notice that sales are not going as you want them to go. Well, maybe marketing is that missing piece. Your end result, the end result that you want, are sales, but there are steps in between that need to get there. And so why don't you talk a little bit about that, the marketing piece and how important it is for us to have the strategy behind our marketing. And you were sharing with me a little bit before we got on here of a client who wanted to create a win. Basically, it was like a win-win situation. So why don't you share a little bit about that so we can kind of get into perspective what it is that you're referring to with the end in mind.
Okay. So what you're referring to there, the way that I can best describe it is marketing is connecting the dots between one action and the next action and the next action and the next action. It's kind of like leaving breadcrumbs behind when you're walking into the forest, like the story of Hansel and Gretel. So you have that trail of crumbs, right? And now your client is picking up those breadcrumbs and they're following you. And so this is why it's important to set up your entire marketing strategy, because if you're just kind of going along and using a few tactics here and there, then you could get a certain level of success accidentally. But when each of these points that you set out is intentional, then you're creating this customer journey that is exactly where and how you want people to experience this journey with you. So the end goal would be for them to become your client, right? Well, the marketing also helps you sell before you make the sale. It's if you're cold calling, if you're knocking on doors, that is directly sales. That's if you have a sales expertise, then by all means do that, because this marketing mumbo jumbo might just get in your way. But if the thought of doing something like that terrifies you, which it did for me, then all of these little steps that you set up is going to help overcome the objections before you get to the sale, is going to help with the rapport, is going to help with the credibility, is going to help with, wow, you are the person that I need to fill this gap in my life or in my business or whatever service you're providing. So it's helping them realize that working with you is the next best step for them. That's probably the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, I know somebody, Angel Hartwell. She headed up one of our recently published books called Wickedly Smart Women, and something like, I have this written on my computer. It says, prepare the prospect for to instantly purchase. And that's what the marketing is, like the breadcrumbs that you're talking about. I don't know that I want my breadcrumbs to lead me to the witch's house, but
okay, maybe that was a bad analogy.
I might use more The Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Thank
better,
you.
right?
I'm gonna have to use that from now on. Yes.
but I got it about the breadcrumbs, because really it is like we're dropping these breadcrumbs to lead them somewhere that we want them to go. And why do we want them to go there? Because it's through them following these steps that leads them to transformation. It's not until they decide to work with us that they will have transformation. And if we start let's say we'll use the breadcrumb example. let's say we drop some breadcrumbs and then we stop dropping them and they haven't started working with us yet, they're still looking for those other breadcrumbs, but you haven't laid those down. And so what happens is they're still searching. So what they're going to do is they're going to go find somebody else to work with.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, like Latara was mentioning, that the strategy is so important, because when you set that strategy up, the beginning to end result, having that end in mind, is that you're able to lead them down a path, that customer journey. You're able to lead them down that path to end up working with you. So having a strategy behind it is where I believe that the vast majority of business owners fall flat. A lot of us are creatives. We're not interested in the strategy. We just want to create. I'm speaking to myself, y'all. And so for those of us who aren't interested in the strategy, we're really missing out. And this is where someone like Latara comes in, is to hop on a call and learn about the strategy. So with that said, I'm going to say you can connect with Latara. Go to her link tree. It's linktr.ee/Latara, Latara.Dragoo, Dragoo. Go over there and set up a call with her so that you can find out if she can help you with the strategy. She might not be able to help you, but she will definitely not be able to help you if you don't hop on that call. So I just want to share that. So Latara, with that said, anything you want to say related to what I just said?
Sure. Yeah, that would be a complimentary marketing strategy with no strings attached. I just want to have you have a win by the end of our meeting. So bring your marketing problem or whatever you're getting stuck on, and I'll help you solve that first step so that maybe you can continue the path. I like the yellow brick road instead of the breadcrumbs, actually.
So we can
continue on the yellow brick road together.
That's exactly. Well, I think it's so important for us to really get clear on the results that we want. And I think a lot of people give up too soon. You know, there's a saying that my mentor, Greg Reed, you know, he wrote a book called 3 Feet from Gold. And he said often, you know, what happens is people get to that step, that last step that they need to take, but that's where they quit. That's where they give up on themselves. Yeah. That's when you need to kick it in and fire up the engines and say, I'm going in because this is where I'm stuck. This is where Latara comes in. You may be an entrepreneur for the last couple of years and you're not seeing the successes that you want. What are you missing in your business? Is it the marketing? Is it the strategy? There's one way to find out, and that's to hop on that call and find out if that is where you're stuck. The strategy, just having someone from the outside look at what we're doing is so helpful. Because oftentimes when we're in our own little worlds and what we're saying, we believe is clear because we're clear on it. And this is one thing I learned about 2 or 3 years into my entrepreneurial journeys. As clear as I was, when I would say it out of my mouth, that wasn't clear to anybody else hearing me. But it's because I was clear that I thought I was clear. And so I had to keep, honing in on it, but it took outside forces or outside people to help me because I was stuck in my head. So with that said, again, go ahead and reach out to Latara on her link tree, Latara.Dragoo. So Latara, oh my gosh, I can't believe our time is, we went way over time, but that's all good. That's all good. This is good. So why don't you share with the audience what you would like them to take away from reading this book, Volume 2 of the book I read, Stories of Transformation.
Okay, so one of the 7 habits from my chapter is to sharpen the saw. And I could probably vouch for you too, Linda. We are both lifelong learners. We're always keeping an open mind, be flexible, take on new things, keep on growing yourself. Even if you are only improving by 1% per day, you're going to be a different person by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I believe that personal growth is one of the most important things in life. And the book I read is full of stories and wisdom that is passed along to you as the reader, and you can enrich your own life as a result of reading it. So it's indispensable.
There you go. Yeah. Carry it around your pocket and read it every day, every single day. Well, you can get your copy of the book I read at actiontakerspublishing.com/TBIR. There are also a lot of free gifts over there. So head on over there, cash in on those free gifts from our authors. Get on that call with Latara, again, on her link tree, Latara.Dragoo. And Latara, thank you so much for being part of this book. I truly appreciate you, everything you're doing to help people to get their message out there and to make a greater impact on the planet. And thanks for being part of this book and many more books in the past with us, and then many more books to come. Really look forward to it.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be a part of it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. We're going to hear from Brigitte right now, hear how writing in a collaboration book has changed her life.
One of the things that I've personally found from my experience of working with Action Takers Publishing is that I've walked away with more friends than I had before because of the relationship that you build with the authors while working in an anthology. I think it's an amazing project to be able to get published. It's a fantastic way to get published the first time, and I've almost seen people who get hooked on doing anthologies because once that bug is bitten, you feel like you can release more and more and more and more stories. And Linda's got a bunch of titles that I think resonates with a lot of us who live in the real world.
So it's an extra trip in the mountain home, but line the